So today is the day, and that is we are taking the AMD Athlon 200G and pitting against one of Intel's most popular budget CPUs in probably the last 5 years, the Intel G4560. Now, the 4560 does have a faster successor. They are very difficult to get your hands on, and the pricing, you might as well go with a locked i3 because the i3 has 3 physical cores and then you're in Ryzen 3 territory. Now, today, we're not only pitting the G4560 versus the 200GE by AMD. I mean, realistically, I'll give you the two long didn't read. From a pure CPU standpoint, the G4560 is 10% faster and has 10% more processing power. But that's not what this video is about. That, in my opinion, is far more boring. What's interesting is when you're only spending like $300, so, you know, your parents let you build a computer, but they're like only $300 and you have to make it so everybody can use it. So you're gonna basically build something without a dedicated graphics card, or you might wanna save up for a graphics card down the road. So we're actually looking today at Vega 3 versus the HD610. Full disclosure, I'm pretty sure the HD610 is a little bit slower, if not maybe a lot, we don't know yet. Some of you that have done research on this probably already know an answer. I really haven't looked into it a lot. I will at the end of this video, but let's take a look at the systems we're working on. So we're gonna call this Battle of the $300 Bills, Intel versus AMD. So taking a really quick look at the specs, they're pretty close to being identical with the exception of like the CPU, the board, different case. It was just easier to work with. I didn't want to put it on a test bench. I actually wanted these both in cases. But we have the G4560, we have an MSI B250 Pro board. I just want a $60 board, something that wasn't completely junk. I went with 2x4 kit of DDR4. It was clocked at 3000 megahertz, but the system only went up to 2400, so that's where we set it at with a Cooler Master Q300L. I got the same power supply for both EVGA 450BR, same SSD, 2 different SSDs. I mean, these are 2 complete systems, mind you, but I got the same SSD. I'm using a portable SSD for the actual games itself, and they both pretty much came out identical, $290 plus tax. That does not include Windows. Obviously, it's not including the portable SSD because that's separate from this video. So let's start taking a look first at synthetics, and then we'll take a look at gaming benchmarks. As I spoke about in the intro, this basically holds true. If you actually look at the raw numbers, you almost get the exact answer. And that is the Intel G4560 is almost exactly 10% faster, 3.2 to 3.5. It's like 9 and some change. And the single thread performance was literally 9%, 9 and some change faster. And the multi-core performance was also 9 and some change, almost 10%. So that's not really a shocker. I think everybody kind of knew that coming into this test where these 2 CPUs stood from a pure throughput, to say the least. But we have 3D Mark and Ashes of Singularity coming out. Let's see if that changes at all. So I have to explain these test results. So from a CPU standpoint, the Intel G4560 did pretty well, a multitude better than the 200GE. And then we take a look at combined and graphical output with this GPU score, and it is not even remotely close between the 2 systems. The Vega 3 is superior almost by a multitude of 2 times versus the HD610. Let's see if Ashes of the Singularity holds true as well. Very, very similar results. A little bit more than 10% on a pure CPU test. And then on a GPU test, we're between 70 and 100%, somewhere in that ballpark. If I do the exact math, it's probably between like 70 and 80%. So clearly this kind of follows 3D Mark. Let's, though, take a look at gaming benchmarks, because in reality, that's all that really matters. So I wanted to start off with GTA 5 because it's a very, very popular title. And it can almost run on most systems nowadays, and this kind of proves it. So we ran 1080p normal settings. Normal, I basically took the default and made sure it was the same settings for both systems, and by doing that you just look at how much VRAM usage and scan over the settings, make sure they haven't changed. But I think it utilized like 1.2 gigs of VRAM, but here, I mean, it's more than 2. it is actually bordering 2.5 times the performance with the Vega 3 versus the Intel HD 610. So let's see if the trend continues, and I'm going to take a look at Ghost Recon's Wildlands next. We have some good news, and we have some bad news. The good news is the AMD chip is winning by a little bit more than double. Not much, but a little bit more. The bad news is when you look at the settings we use, which is 720p low settings, I don't really say that this game's playable. Anything lower than 720p is going to look horrible, and honestly 720p doesn't look particularly great in the first place. And the fact that it's only averaging 23 FPS, that's really going to lead me to say that while one chip is a lot better than the other in this regard, neither one's really up to the task for Ghost Recon's Wildlands. However, I never really thought 8 FPS, just under 8 FPS, would sway my opinion. And what that is I said at 22.82 FPS, I don't really consider that playable. But an average of 30.76, we're borderline, depending on how much of the lows you get in the 1%, 0.1% lows, we're in the playable range. I mean, it's not going to look great, 720p low settings, but we are looking at something that now resembles playable. The HD 610, not so much. Now this score, these ones are tough to decipher. I'll tell you, though, to be honest, neither one is really something I would say can play this game to any level. It was considered insufficient even at 720p at light. Those raw scores just aren't that good. You're looking for a 2,000 plus score for what they consider playable, and that's pretty much at the lowest setting you can get. So unfortunately, we're in cross Final Fantasy 14 off, but do note that it won by nearly double again. So definitely a reoccurring situation we have here. In another game that I deem at this point to be playable, it was fine. Lows definitely dipped in the 20s and everything, but highs were in the upper 40s. It was an okay experience for 400 720p low settings. Do note the 610 didn't actually average 1 FPS. It wouldn't launch the game. Tried multiple times, tried reformatting the main drive, and launched on other computers, just not this one. So I put one just to show you that I didn't forget, but yeah, it didn't do well at all. I would double check it. I think there's even a setting lower than low. I think there's lowest. I did the low, and 30 FPS, it'll get you by. It may not be the perfect situation, but it'll get you by. Same thing, the HD 610, I wouldn't load the demo. It would try to load, and then it would just crash consistently, but wouldn't do it on other systems. So definitely we're going to X off that chip as being contender in this regard. So what was the point of pitting two $300 computers with integrated graphics against each other? Well, it's realistic to say that sometimes, you might want to build something for yourself, or, you're 14, for example. This will be an example. Your parents say, well, we trust you to build a computer, but your sister needs to be able to use it. It can't take up a lot of space, and oh, by the way, only $300. So you're not going to go on Craigslist and buy something because you have no way of testing it. I doubt your parents are going to take you to those meetups. There's definitely a lot of inherent danger with meeting up with people you don't know on the internet. Uber. That's a whole nother meme. But, I've used Uber before. It's fine. But anyway, so, but you might want to upgrade it next Christmas, and you play really popular esports games. So Overwatch, for example, Rocket League, League of Legends, Dota 2, Hearthstone, World of Warcraft. Granted, World of Warcraft may not play super well, but that's more optimization issues. You could play it on this without a problem. I don't know how high settings, but 1080p, probably somewhere between 1 and 3 would be fine, and rates will probably not be much worse than other systems just because of the poor optimization. But anyway, as you saw in the video though, and I want to steer clear of the AMD versus Intel debate, but the chip was 10% faster, and the Intel chip is rather, and it performed 10% better in CPU tasks. Clock for clock, they're tied. The IPC difference is so close it doesn't matter. Intel only wins out because of clock speed. Now the question is which one do you go with? Well, if you're only spending $300, there's a clear winner. If you're adding a graphics card, the Intel's a better chip. It is, because you don't need the integrated graphics. Although logic would say if you have a FreeSync monitor, you can trick it into working with FreeSync. But anyway, the other thing you have to consider is you can drop this chip in today and drop in a 2700X tomorrow with XFR enabled and a little bit of overclocking. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but you could. The Intel chip, the best you can do is a 7700K, and there's really like, you're not going to boost up. You're going to need a better, it doesn't come with a cooler, and you can't get the newest platform. So if you're looking to spend like $400 to $500, you want the best system now, go with the Intel chip, grab a graphics card. Just understand that when you go to upgrade, you're replacing board and CPU. If you're okay with 10% less theoretical performance, and you're going to upgrade down the road, go with the AMD system. That's my recommendation. If you want to buy anything in these builds that I use, look in the description below. Otherwise, like the video if you liked it. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But as always, this is Steve from PC Budget Solutions, and I will see you all later on down the road. But I have a lot of content coming, at least 5 or 6 videos after this, which should be in a 2-day upload cycle. So stay tuned.